Okay. So I'm going to record this meeting. This meeting will be recorded, and I'll be publishing this on either a blog site or one of the sites. I'll notify everybody on where I'll publish. Okay. So one interesting thing is, if you see the screen, you would see a new logo, a new nice logo for our group, so for our community. So we created this logo a week back, thanks to Bhavani, one of our community member, who took pains in creating this logo. So Bhavani, I would like to thank you for creating this logo. Thank you very much. It's a nice logo. It actually very clearly indicates that there's a brain in between where people are thinking smartly, and there are people around who are making the smart community succeed. That's the ultimate ultimate vision of this community, and that's what the logo communicates. Moving to the next screen. So we started this in October, and we have currently 60 community members. Not many of them are active. I know all of them are busy with their regular activities, but we have around 60 members. But we would like to grow as much as possible, as many members as possible. But the interesting thing is, if you look at this, we have people from various companies. You see, all the big names are there. That's interesting. And we also have freelancers from startup companies. We have from startup companies, and we also have freelancers who are spending some time, with the community, helping us. The other interesting part, guys, is the experience range of our community members are ranging from 1 year experience to up to 27 years experience. And many of them are more than 10 years experience, which means as we share our thoughts, as the experience gets shared, I think it will be an interesting learning process for all of us, because this is a group with 60 people having this huge experience of 1 to 27 means that we have a lot of opportunity to learn and grow, right? And then if you look at the areas, we have storage, security, identity and access management, cloud, networks, healthcare, supply chain, data analytics, banking, e-commerce, mobile, retail, and telecom. I mean, I think you name the industry, it's all there. Probably system software is not there. Maybe it's missing somewhere. So things like low-level software, operating system, mainframe, those things are not there. But I don't know how much relevant they are at this point in time. But whatever you name it, right? Whatever is needed for growth, that's all there. So people are. I think, in my opinion, we can have more volunteers taking up more participation in the community and sharing their thoughts. That's very good, actually. The next one, if you go to the next slide, the activities that typically we do. This is for the benefit of people who have just joined and who may not be aware of what we do with the community. Is we share ideas. We share best practices, opinions, strategies, approaches. Code we haven't shared, but if it's an open source code, people can help each other by sharing that. And we also share use cases, right? So we have 3 groups. We have a Google Groups. We have WhatsApp group, which is quite active, and we also have blogs where people are, welcome to blog their opinions, right? We conduct webinars. The second webinar we are conducting, and we're going to have more and more webinars. We may conduct some off-track webinars or some kind of a panel discussion too. We would like to do it more frequently, but I would like to see how much is the participation level and then decide. Typically, at this point in time, I'm looking at doing a webinar once in 2 months. But in case if we feel that it's too long a period, then probably we can look at doing some kind of an engagement activity every month. We also have panel discussions. There's going to be one panel discussion in this session, and we might have people do demos also. Now, it's open to all. There are no restrictions. So all that you have to do is, I'll be asking for volunteers whenever at the right time, at an appropriate time before a webinar or before an engagement process. And people are interested to do whatever. I mean, it's not restricted to just these 3. But if you want to do anything, you're most welcome, right? It's going to be on internet based. This is the channel tool that we are going to use moving forward. Unless and until it's really difficult for people to join, we may change the tool. Otherwise, this is a free tool, and there are no restrictions for using this tool at this point in time. One request and appeal to the community member is that we need active participation from people. We need more people to join the community so that the knowledge gets spread. So my request is, you see that link there, right? smarttestersgroup.wordpress.com. Please pass that URL to your friends, your relatives, whoever you feel can benefit, can get benefited, can contribute well. Please pass this. They can go through this, and they can also, it also has got a link inside to register with the group. But what is more important is for people to come forward and participate, because there's a unique thing that has happened, and we would like this community to be very, very successful and probably one of the biggest community in the world. That's the whole ultimate idea of this community. This is the rough agenda. So without taking much time, I'm done with my agenda of welcome address. Welcome, once again, welcome all of you and have great learning. We're going to change the agenda slightly. What we are going to do is we are going to have the panel discussion first. Jatin would be the moderator. He's one of the community members from Micro Focus. And he's going to introduce the panel to all of us first, and then we'll get on to the challenges in test automation. Once we are done with this, we would have the next speaker, Naresh from NetApp, who is going to talk about taming the beast. It's a very interesting title that Naresh has given. Naresh, are you there?
It's Neeraj.
No, I'm talking about Naresh Garuda, who is going to actually talk about taming the beast.
Yeah, I'm here, Krishnan.
Excellent, excellent. Right. So my suggestion is for the panel discussion to happen, Jatin will set all the rules for us. My only request is please hold your questions till the end of the panel discussion, because Jatin is going to open it up for Q&A later. Thanks once again. Over to you, Jatin.
Okay, thanks, Krishnan. I mean, it was a good briefing about the overall this community and how we can help each other here. So thanks, it was good. So okay, guys. So good morning, everybody, and I think we are all here for a common cause, which is about learning from each other and then see how we can probably spread the knowledge across. So today's agenda for discussion is about challenges in test automation, and we are all being part of the QA community. We all see somewhere or the other there are different challenges. Whatever test methodology we actually follow, it may be waterfall, it may be like olden days we used to follow V model. Now Agile is picking up. There are various versions of Agile what people are following. There are different release timelines in terms of there are people who are having a monthly release to a quarterly release to a 6-monthly release. But the challenges may remain maybe a little bit here and there. There may be small changes, but on a whole, the challenges remains all across for achieving a good amount of automation what we kind of aim for. And to just give a quick so maybe when we talk about the challenges, there are also some expectations with respect to how and what should be the outcome of automation. So especially the top management, product management, and other stakeholders, they see that automation is going to be a complete game changer, and that will help us to achieve 100% quality, that will help us to achieve 100% execution efficiency, and then we will just go and it will help us to walk on water. Probably that's the kind of expectation. But I think it is a responsibility of all of us to set the right expectation in terms of automation is also a piece of code which has its own life cycle. We have to develop it, we have to test it, we have to stabilize it, and then only we will start yielding the fruit out of it. And and automation alone can't solve it. Even the underlying test cases which we have designed, only, I mean, the quality of automation heavily rely on the quality of test cases which are there. Then there are, again, product undergoes many changes where the automation again keeps getting an impact. So how do we stabilize? How do we take care of ensuring that whatever investment we have done from automation point of view, we are able to reap a fruit out of it. So today we are going to have discussion around this in the context of Agile as well as in waterfall. And today's panel member, as Krishnan has already mentioned, so we have Neeraj Vijay, Kanaga Sundaram, Krishnan, and myself. I'll be the moderator. So as Krishnan mentioned, some of the ground rules quickly. So we want you to hold your questions once we open it up for the question and answer round. Till then, so our panel members are going to start with sharing their views and experiences with respect to what they see as a challenge for test automation. So let me just start with a quick introduction from my side. I think few of you will know me. I was working with Novel during the time frame of 2001 and 2004. Myself, Jatinder Kumar Saini, and I have a total of around 24 years of experience. And currently, I'm working with Micro Focus as a QA manager, and I take care of a product called Data Center Automation. And we follow safe, agile, and we have a overall 3-monthly release cycle. And automation is, again, as I said, the people see automation as a big game changer, which it should be, but it has its own challenges. And prior to joining Micro Focus, I was with NetApp for 10 years. I was working there as a senior QA manager, and so on. So maybe let me just move on the stick to the panel members for their introduction, and then we'll get started. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Jatin. Welcome everyone. Very good morning, Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, I'll say. I am Neeraj, work with Micro Focus, and I have overall 11 years of experience. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I have last 5.5 years I am with Micro Focus. Before that I worked for EMC. RSA division, actually security division. So I have wide variety of experience in the QA, security, pen testing, or automation with Selenium or command line tools like curl, shell script, sometimes Python, and this is quite a, I have seen both the success and not so good success in the automation. So I'll share the experience around that. And in this session, we will talk about what are the challenges in automation, and we will take it forward. Over to you, Jatin.
Okay, thanks, Neeraj. So, Kanaga?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Kanaga Sundaram, working for Ericsson India Global Services. I work in the area of SDN and NFEI, and in Bangalore, I'm working as an architect and product owner for automation and testing related activities in the SDN controller testing team. Prior to Ericsson, I have been working with Juniper, Cisco, and HCL technology, and in between little bit in Novel. So Novel, I used to test GenWorks, and I have around 22 years of experience, and in that 13 years is fully into manual testing, automation, white box testing, all those things. Thank you.
Good, Krishnan. Kanaga. So, yeah, so the next person for the panel member is Krishnan. I don't think he needs a lot of introduction. We all know him, but let's just do the formality. Yeah, Krishnan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jatin. Just a quick brief. Most of you know me. So I have around 23 years experience totally, and I used to work for Micro Focus. Before that, Novel, and I used to also work for a company called Web Methods. I used to be a developer, a development architect, and then a tester, a test engineer, a test manager. I resigned Micro Focus last September as a senior QA manager, and at this point in time, I'm doing nothing other than running this community and taking care of household activities. That's about it, nothing else. So this is keeping me almost occupied. So thanks for all the participation, and that's what I'm doing at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Krishnan. So let's get started with the sharing of the experiences from our varied from the panel members. So let's start with Neeraj Vijay in terms of his the challenges what he sees with respect to test automation. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thanks, Jatin. Again, welcome everyone. So I'll divide my present this automation challenge in 3 phases. One phase is like what is called a successful automation, what is called a automation that is not that successful, and how we can take it forward. So I'll put a question for you, and while I am presenting and putting some thoughts around that, you can think about that. What is the success and failure measure, and what can be the improvement measure from your experience or point of view? So let's start with this automation success. So one of the primary thing which automation success, when you say what is the good metrics for the successful is, what is the coverage? So coverage of the product in terms of the new feature development versus the old feature development. So do we have taken care of both the things? If yes, that is a good automation success metrics. How many number of test cases are automated? That is another metrics which is very useful when projecting the progress of the team. And more the number, obviously, it is very good. Then the automation test, how many bugs they are finding actually. So mostly I have seen that people start with the happy path of automation, where you have the straightforward setups and you automate it, and over the period of time finding bugs through them is lower down. So are we covering both the happy and not so happy path, like the difficult path, negative scenario? If yes, that is a automation success matrix. And how much time it is take to maintenance? If it is less the time, it is very good for the product teams. And time taken to automate and the skill required, all this. So if we have the skillful person and time taken to automate is quickly, we can get a turnaround in quick time, then it's a great success metrics of the automation. So these are the some points which I feel like if we say yes, that everything is doing great, we will call it a successful metrics for the automation, and product is in good shape from the automation point of view. But if you look at the other part where automation is not that successful, so what all the criteria? So if we are not doing the enough coverage for the product, so over the period of time we develop a lots of new features. So are we covering or are we emphasizing on both the new parts as well as on the old parts? So it's happened that over the period of time and the last 4-5 years, when automation is pick up a little more, we started covering the new features, but somewhere some line product old areas, regression areas are not that automatable. So this is not a good sign, because someone has to spend time on doing that. So if we are not doing that, then it's a difficult thing for the product. How much time it takes to maintain? So if you have observed it, every 4-5 years or 6 years, the UI of the product gets changing. So how much your automation framework, automation suite takes time to maintain it? Did we have designed it in a well-formed way that automation is very effort to maintain this is very less? And most of the case I find it is very difficult to cope up with the new development of the UI, and if someone is writing the Selenium or Java, Selenium or TestNG kind of code, then it is very difficult to maintain it. One of the challenges that is not taken care in the automation suite is that if you can't extend your framework for the adopting the new technology, like 5 years back there are less of the web services, but now it is in every other product uses it. So if your automation framework is not taken care of that and design, then it's not a successful framework, right? Then you need skills. So what is the team challenges? What is the skills? And there will be some set of experienced people, while most of them are newcomers. So if automation is designing some old things, I'll take an example of this. Is like one of the automation is designed in the Perl, and over the period of time, maintenance of Perl is little higher than the new like Python or something else. So and we don't have a very limited set of people. So maintaining of that Perl scripts, Selenium Perl, is very difficult. So this is another challenge, and we can say that our automation strategy not gone well. We have not seen beyond the line Then another challenge is that you any
Go ahead,
question?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Then another challenge is that product. We spend a lot of time in automation, but we have not yielded the results. So one of the failure which we have seen, and I can tell you from the experience that sometimes the product is difficult to automate. It is difficult to automate in terms of probably we have not chosen the right set of framework, or there are so many changes in the product that it is becoming unstable and turn into the maintenance automation rather than a new feature or automation development product. So those are the things which we have to keep in mind, and if we don't do, then we can say that our automation story is not successful. And over the period of time, how efficient your automation. So one of the key metrics which I always look at, that if you are running the automation, we say that we have the 500 test case. What is the ability to find bugs through that automation? If we are not, we are just running for sake of completion and we are not finding issues, or someone has to do the manual work and then finding the issues on those things, then I think that is not a successful criteria for the automation. So automation should be, as vital important in the overall QA release cycle, and not only from the coverage point of view, but from the defect quality point of view. So these are the failures major, which I think that automation, when they are not so successful, and so these are, I put some points on the what is the successful and not so successful criteria for the automation. But if you look at the overall, so I'll tell you one example that in one of my previous organization, product were not automatable from the Python and Selenium, and we spent a few years to automate that part, and barely we can automate is the sanity and smoke test. And eventually you have to go on the web services, and there we got the lots of success. So initially 2-3 years in the investment of the automation was not that successful, and obviously it's a kind of a pressure when you don't choose the right set of technology, because products were not automatable from that point of view. So over the years, new people come, new team members happen, new management, lots of things happens, and to make things successful, you have to brainstorm and find out what is the things to do for automation. So some of the pointers, moving to the third section of my topic is, so choose wisely. What are some pointers where we can say that we can make the automation so successful story? So one of the thing is UI code maintenance. If it is too high, and if you have to automate certain pages or sections, and you can think that okay, it is not that critical that we spend the 3 weeks of time or 4 weeks of time. I think we can take a backseat for that kind of UI things, and we can focus on how we can automate the functionality. So I'll take an example of one of the things which we did in the recent past is like web services, so REST automation. So UI was changing and lots of things are getting added and deleted. So what we did is we took the functionality, product functionality, and do that automation through the shell script, curl script, and Perl. And we had a great success actually. So our automation maintenance was almost less than 10% over the period of 2-3 years, and we had the maximum coverage. So that is some of the pointers which we can take into the consideration. If it is taking too much time or maintenance of UI is high, we can take such paths. It is always very, if we thought well in advance, then we can create some good code. So that should be. Then one of the key things, so in some of the discussion we think about that automation code has to be well thought, and it is not just a one person. Earlier one of the things which happened is that we had a separate automation team and the separate QA team, and there is barely a correlation until unless someone wants to ask for some functionality or all this. So, but over the period, this thing is changed and everyone is for automation. It is not a 1 person or 2 person job to do it. So take into the account of the experienced people and say that what is required to be automation, how much coverage and what all we want for the automation, and that will create a good atmosphere, and everyone will think that okay, what is the right strategy. They will do some brainstorm. Obviously it is not going to happen in 1 sitting or 2 sitting, but over the period of time, if we take into the account when we start the automation, that how much effort and what is the good strategy to do the automation, and that will be very helpful. So we adopted this one of the strategy in our automation, and so far it is going good. Then so over the period of time, the same person is expected to do the automation and the manual testing. So it brings a new challenge. So it brings the time allocation. So the mindset of the team has to build to automate first, and until unless there is some priority work, automation first and do the coverage. So the next time when you do the testing of the same thing, you don't have to repeat it manually. So that kind of time allocation and mindset has to build. Then technology and framework. So I have seen both the things. In my past experience, people tend to focus on single technology, and everyone has to work on that. If someone is not good in Java, still he has to work in the Java. So, and we in that way, it was not well utilized of the resources. But in the recent years, I have seen that if team has the freedom to choose the automation and they have the ability to integrate it with the continuous environment, that is another big thing is happening. Then I think that people can pick the technology and automation language based on their choice, and if they are confident to integrate it, it is very good. So it will create a diversity in the automation, and it will be very helpful in overall automation. And then there are few things like some of the mindset, like one of my old colleague told me that if you want to be more productive, automate the small stuff. And if you are able to automate some small stuff, even though you want to do the passwordless login, that is also a kind of automation. You don't have to repeat the key in for password many times if you are accessing some systems. So these are the small things which we have to mindset, and if you are installing, just create a small script to automate, and that is very helpful in this. So these are the things, and one of the topic discussion happens. I'll not just touch upon, not going into the deep, like security automation tools. I have exposure to many of the tools. In fact, I provide. Sorry,
So Neeraj, looking at the time check, maybe we can have a separate discussion where we will talk about in depth on the security and the deep dive on some of those areas. But for right now, I think let's stay on the horizon, and then the breadth.
Okay, then I think I am done. From we can skip the security automation, and we can move ahead.
Right. Yeah. So thank you, Neeraj. I think you have covered a good breadth in terms of what constitutes a successful automation and not so successful automation, and what should we look at move forward. So I have one question for you based on what you talked about. So you say the technology keeps changing. So let's take an example. Suppose if we have been using certain automation infrastructure which has become outdated. Maybe something 2 years ago it was relevant, but now I see the new technologies or the new things are available which are more relevant now. So what is your take in terms of choosing some of or bringing some of these changes, and how it impacts in a positive way, because the maintainability of the old stuff, and then adding the new dimensions to it by adding the new technologies and all that. So what is your take on that?
So yeah, that's the actual challenge of when anyone is working on the UI based automation with any of the things. So I feel that it's close. One thing is always required for QA and development is not to do the things in isolation. So I'll say that when you are developing the framework and when you are doing something, just talk to the development and say that okay, IDs and all these are very important things. And now we are moving to the REST automation. So you have to design, automation in such a structural way, and many people opinions are required. No one is expert. It should not consider that only one person duty to develop it. But, it should be a collaborative effort and brainstorm, and if we need some discussion with the development, we should do that and adopt the technology in the automation to avoid at the extent of such changes. Second thing is your framework should.
One second, I request people who are not talking can they put themselves into mute, so that we don't have this noise coming in the background. Sorry about it.
Yeah, so that is one point actually, and second thing is finding the best practice of the new technology, how they can be automatable, and your automation is always should be very structured, and it should not be somewhere down like 1 point failure or 1 point success. It should be taken care of the modularity. That's what I feel.
Okay. Thank you, Neeraj. I think this is a good explanation. So I also have one more quick question on you, because you talked about the success also depends on the defects from automation. But what we understand mainly is automation is basically can catch only the regression defects. So how do we define the success with respect to catching all the regression from automation what we have? And what is the if there has to be a mix of manual versus automated or regression point of view? I'm not covering for the new features, at least from the regression point of view, what that ideal mix should be.
So over the years, one of the things everyone has noticed is that setups and products are deployed in very complex way where customer wants to do a lots of things, and automation first thing first we take it going with always the happy path and not touch upon the customer scenarios and all this. So what I feel is in those areas automation should always include. So whenever you do some defect testing of the customers, it should be tried to be put into the automation regression suite and see if there is any gap. So it has to be periodically look for those things, so that over the period of time the manual intervention is reduced to the extent. And second thing is if we can do some setup specific automation, what I meant is that deploying the typical customer scenarios, taking their some kind of configuration or knowledge, and if we build our automation for that and coverage those scenarios, that will helpful in a very long term.
Okay, great. So I think so we have heard a good dimensions from Neeraj about the challenges and how to look forward approach for automation. So thank you, Neeraj. So maybe let's just move on with the discussion, with the panel discussion, and I would like to call upon Kanaga to his views.
Yeah, thanks Jiten and Neeraj for the detailed discussion of what we are facing today and how to overcome that. So Neeraj spoke more about the technical aspect of it and how to make it successful. But I wanted to bring in the fact that the process and related areas. So earlier we used to do most of the software development happen using waterfall model, wherein the rate at which the software is changing is very less, and you will have a dedicated time for testing and automation, and things are pretty well documented. So what I'm saying, document is whenever you design a UI or you design a API, it is very good, very well documented, and you see very less changes. So in that aspect, with that aspect, if you start automating, then the change of your input output may be very less. But now most of the software development happens using agile, so wherein the rate at which the software is changing is very frequent, and the software or interface what you see yesterday may be different today. So in this scenario, making automation successful and stable and worthwhile, it is very difficult to cope it up with this. So actually, Jiten was talking about automation engineers should talk to the developer, all those things. But my take on this is entirely different. So agile, you should have automation engineer, test engineer, and developer in the same team, so that the automation engineer knows what is happening on the software day in day out, and he knows what is happening on the interface or on the GUI or on the database side, so that he can make his script always up to the mark and always successfully running on your given software. We have been working in different models wherein we have automation engineer as part of the cross-functional team and as part of a different team, but they will be kind of consultant or contractors. And another method is automation itself is a different cross-functional team. So my experience is whenever you have automation engineer part of your cross-functional team, the success rate is very high. And also the automation scripts or automation programs, whatever written, is very well aligned with the software, the road what the software is traveling, and your automation always goes with that. Whereas if you introduce the barriers of different teams and different culture, this makes very difficult for people to work together, and their priorities are different. Maybe your cross-functional team may have a different priority to deliver, whereas automation team will have a different priority because it completely differs from your hierarchy, from the product and the process as well as program point of view. So the manager who is managing the cross-functional team or development team may have a different priority, whereas the automation team will have a different priority. So this becomes very difficult. Though the persons are reporting to a different management, different companies altogether, it should be part of a single cross-functional team from the technology point of view or technical point of view. And another point I wanted to iterate is developing always automatable software. So what I mean by this is Neeraj was telling some part of the product may not be automatable. So whenever you design a requirement or whenever you design a user story in Agile, the user story writer should think whether this can be tested and automated. If you bring lot of things which cannot be automated, then maintaining the software will become very hard and very costly. So say you start a new product today, and then you build functionalities on top of the product day in day out, and one point of time you need lot of manual effort to regress the software. So that is not a good thing to do. So whenever you write a software, you need to think of whether I can automate, and whenever you deliver something, you should be having automation coverage, 100% automated coverage of the legacy software. Are you able to hear me? Actually, my laptop got logged.
No, we
No
can
problem,
hear.
right?
I can hear.
Yeah. So whenever you plan a software, okay. So whenever you plan a software, you should always think, or the other way, whenever you deliver a software, at the time of delivery, you should be having a working automation for that particular software. Otherwise, it is very difficult to maintain the software. So these are the few things I wanted to add on top of what Jiten and Neeraj was talking.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Kanga. I think that's a good description from the process point of view, like how we should have a cross-functional team instead of having a dedicated team for doing automation. Even though they may report to multiple managers, but if they are part of the same team and they know in and out what is happening, what is getting developed, and they can also provide their testability requirements and ask for the hooks what is required for automation. That will certainly help. So I have one question for you in terms of what is the ideal or the best way in terms of defining that who should do automation? Is the automation only responsibility, automation of the new features as well as maintenance of the code is the only responsibility of the automation engineer, or as a team which can also have the developers and the normal tester or an automation engineer separately if it is? So who all should be involved in maintaining the test specifically?
Yeah. So earlier, generally, if you see in most of the companies, you'll have a regression team. So they only run the regression and then tell you what are all the breakages, all those things. And the cross-functional team, in most of the cases, they develop the test cases and hand over it to them, to the regression team, and then their job is done. So this is not working at all. So I'm saying this based on my experience, and few places I have seen these things are working and failing also. So what I'm saying working is when you have the cross-functional team owning the responsibility of always maintaining the correctness of your automation scripts, it is always better. Why I'm saying this is, you know what feature is changing, what CLI is changing. So before you do the changes in the code, the automation engineer can modify the changes in the regression script, so that the regression is always up and running, and your legacy functionality is always tested without any gap or something like that. And your manual test team always focus on what you are developing new. They are not going to spend any time on the legacy features which are already developed. That should be the ultimate aim of the automation or the automation portfolio. So you have to bring in test cases. So the test cases has to be tested manually only once, or maybe the first time itself you should try to run the automation script to test the software. So that is the ideal goal each automation team or each product development team should have. So if you have that motto, then we will be able to achieve a 100% regressed software at any time, any hour. So whenever somebody wanted your software to be delivered or demoed, you are very happy and you are very confident to give a demo, because you know your regression will do all the job.
Sure. Thank you, Kanaga. So let's move on. So maybe over to you, Krishnan.
So is it? Okay, sure. So I'm not going to talk about Scrum or Waterfall model or any engineering practice, but I'm just going to talk about a bit of motivation for engineers to do automation. See, I do believe that today is the better day. You know, today is a better world for actually doing automation. The reason is because we all know that we have better infrastructure, right? And we also have better frameworks. You name any framework like AutoIt or any Jenkins or Selenium or whatever framework we're talking about. We have better frameworks which are available, and we have better tools, right? Like for example, if you want to do a REST API automation, you have SOAP UI as an example. And if you want to do UI automation, we have a plethora of tools, both from a framework point of view and also from a programming point of view, right? And we have virtual management tools, Docker tools, where you can actually take a snapshot of a virtual machine or a Docker container, and then you could actually automate it, and then you can actually reverse the snapshot, and then you could actually run it and play it. So these things are possible in an automated way. More than that, I think I feel that any infrastructure or anything that you want to automate, today we have better APIs also. So what it means is gone are the days where you have to really struggle and you have to code every level. Every detail has to be coded first. I think in my opinion that may not be needed. Only the business logic has to be coded, but the rest of the things are available ready-made. So one should be able to do some research, and they should be able to extract the right information and the right tool and the right requirement before they could actually start doing automation, right? And also we have programming languages. You don't really have to actually use if somebody is not really comfortable with a particular programming language, then there are other languages which are more easy to understand code, like Ruby or Python or Perl, and things like that, that is possible. It's just a matter of scripting, right? So I think, in my opinion, the return of investment from automation should be pretty high. I agree with our previous speakers saying that you have to be very selective on what you want to automate. That's also very important. But what I feel is, from an automation point of view, I still feel that there's a required amount of training the workforce has to be focused on. Company has to actually give enough, actually spend more time in training people. I think today people, there is a view that automation may be a little difficult task to achieve. I need in-depth programming knowledge and in-depth tools knowledge to automate. I think that fear has to be first removed. People should be given an opportunity to try, and they should be recognized duly when something successful happens. I've heard, I've seen, I've experienced a failure in automation where people actually think big. They look at the big picture and they actually want to go very deep in automation. But in my opinion, a small wins, the leads and who can do better automation can demonstrate small portions of automation activities. Need not be like a whole thing, right? It can be small wins, and once people see those small wins, small automation capabilities, then people can they can pitch in, right? That's what is possible. I'm talking about from a motivation point of view. But still, I think, in my opinion, one of the most important things that I feel we should do is when we start estimating the entire activity, both from testing point of the whole to the end-to-end estimation. I think there is a flaw that is made in estimating for automation. I think there's an assumption that automation may take a small amount of time, or if automation takes a large amount of time, or maybe a little bit more time, then there's an understanding, or there's an assumption that no, this is not possible within the given timeline. So release is more important. So let's do just enough automation and we'll move forward. So what happens in that situation is you never be able to catch up with the code. So the code is written, right, and the whole design is done, and you are given very little less time for automation. So you end up doing a very little automation, and you have to actually you're always in a catching mode. You're always in a catching up game. So I think, in my opinion, I think companies have to play some kind of a balancing act between what is the real need at this point in time for automation, when do you really automate it, and what is the importance of doing automation at this point in time. I think we as senior engineers inside the company, spokesperson for QA and automation, we should be able to take some bold steps, and we should be able to educate people to do this. That's one thing. Then I think it takes time to create an automation structure or practice. I think, in my opinion, it is more a culture within the team. I've seen teams who are very, very successful in automation. Whether the management folks, they give time or not, it doesn't matter. They jump in, they spend some extra time in doing automation. But what I meant is, a team has to be, we have to have some culture of automation with the team, and that culture has to be built. Once the culture is built, once the team experiences the advantages, the benefits of automation, I think people will pitch in and they'll start doing it, right? So that's what I thought it's extremely critical from an automation point of view. From a motivation point of view, I think we should give more. We should recognize people who spend more time in doing automation. We should actually, it could be a small recognition, like a small cup or a pat on the back or something like that. So they also get motivated to do more and more automation, and others also will get motivated to pitch in and do automation. So I think the last but not the least I would like to say is, before I conclude, is I think that people typically do not understand the benefits of automation. Even if they do automation, how it has helped the productivity of the product, how it has made the system more efficient, is not explained to the junior-most engineer properly. So they tend to take things very lightly. So if some of the senior engineers or the manager, whoever, if they can actually sit in a status meeting and explain the team that because of this amount of automation that has been done, we have benefited like this. Which means, like, for example, we would have actually missed our cycle 2, right, of testing, right? I'm talking about, let's say, cycle 2 of testing, or maybe a couple of sprints extra we would have taken. But because of automation, because of your efficient work, we're able to deliver the same thing in 2 sprints instead of 5 sprints or 4 sprints. So that will actually, motivate the team to do more and more automation. That's all I have, Jatin. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishnan. I think this was a good discussion about or the good talk about the motivation factor. So I have few questions for the panel member before we actually start open it up for the Q&A. Quickly, so there are testers who have been working as a manual tester, maybe as part of their academics or maybe the previous project they have learned some languages or maybe they have used some of the tools which are no more applicable or valid. How do you, so we have heard from Krishnan talking about that, okay, trying is important, look for small wins and then start. But still people have a lot of fear about, oh, I don't know much of automation, so what should I do in this case? So I want to hear something.
Yeah, maybe. So I think the fear of automation is only, in my opinion, it will be there up to a point when people have given it a try. I think we should actually encourage people to do small programming activities. Maybe there could be something like, for example, in my team in Micro Focus, we used to do something called as a cost session, a knowledge sharing session, where people would actually be trained internally on some of the tools. Right? It could be like a weekly or a monthly, and we used to do something of a pair programming. Let's say if somebody who is not very confident in taking up an automation work because of the background, then the person can be paired with a better automation engineer so that the person can be given a small task. It could be as simple as moving a snapshot from A to B. It's just a matter of using a parameterized API in VM. That's about it, right? So let's say that the person is asked to write a function. Initially, we explain the person how to do it. Then we give an opportunity to the person to do it. Then there's a wow effect, right? Oh, I can also do it, kind of a thing. I think it has to happen in a slow and steady, in a handhold way, till a person becomes confident. I think that's what, in my opinion, and coupled with trainings. Because trainings alone is not going to help, right? Because after the training, people will forget what they have learned, right? Training will help to some extent, but hand-holding, cost sessions, working with the team, pair programming, all these things will play a very critical factor.
Yeah, I think this is certainly a good point, Krishnan, and especially it is all about trying and then removing the fear of like, okay, I mean, you're not expected to probably just turn around the whole thing, but at least give it a try and then look at small wins. Yeah, thank you so much. So with this, let's open it up for Q&A. Maybe all the members who are attending this are open to ask your questions.
Hey, this is Shivgita.
Hi, Shivgita.
I may just want to reflect more than asking questions, right? So, few points which I will reflect on with respect to automation, right, based on my experience. So, one is we do automation tests, right? We should be able to run all the tests, right? And if we making the test commented and whenever they fail and not use them, then it is of not much use, right? And all 100% of tests should be running at any point of time. So that is when we really reap the benefit, right? That means the test automated, whatever they are automated, they should be running. And any automation failure should be looked at on highest priority and should be solved, right? Even more than any customer issue. That's because if all the tests are running successfully, that gives us a confidence that there are no regressions, right? So more than adding new tests, we should focus on running all the tests and maintaining them. And any failure should be dealt on highest priority. Then the third point I wanted to reflect is on the richness of the data, right? What we provide into the automation suite and the data validation, especially for the data critical applications like backups or accounting, all those things. Data validation becomes a very highest priority one. It is not just operation success or fail. We should also validate the data completely and 100%. So I think these are the few points which I wanted to add, right? And to the last point, there was a question, right? There are people having fear on automation. I think my perspective for that would be that now QA engineers, it is must to have coding expertise not just ability to do. They should have that expertise and passion. If you don't have that, it is not good, you are not a right fit for QA, right? I think in that way, because it has become very indispensable. You have to do automation, and you should have that passion to do automation, right? I think that is what I wanted to share.
Right, Shweta. I think with DevOps coming in multiple, being adopted in multiple ways, I think automation becomes a de facto standard. Also, I think, in my opinion, automation, an automated code should be of high quality. If it has to catch quality defects, I think automation code has to be written in a very high quality way, which means the engineer who is writing the automation code should have a very deep knowledge on data structures, design patterns. A lot of emphasis has to be given to that. That's, I think, in my opinion, is not being paid much attention, I guess.
Yeah, so in fact, a good point, Shivgita. So as Krishnan mentioned about the good understanding and maybe see, when we hire people and there are people with a different experience, they come and then join the automation team for doing automation. Maybe if there's an automation architect who defines these ground rules, define the do's and don'ts for automation, who defines these practices and for ensuring the hygiene for automation, and enforce with the proper reviews and all, and ensure that all the hygienes are being followed, I think we can certainly have a good quality of automation.
True.
Sitting next to Krishnan, actually there is a miscommunication in the industry stating that automation will reduce jobs and all among the junior engineers in the company.
So you are asking a question or you are telling?
No. Yeah, I'm just mentioning there is a miscommunication in the industry. If automation comes, jobs will get reduced, so we won't get jobs, something like that. There is a miscommunication there in the industry right now.
Sure. So I think this is actually, and if we look at that automation coming in, but somebody has to put that logic, somebody has to think and look at like what to automate.
Jatin, there is a big echo from your end.
Yeah, I don't know it's from my end because. Hello, is it better now?
Yeah, it's good now. It's good.
Okay. So I think it is important for us to understand. So let's just remove the fear. If we don't do automation or if there is no enough automation, I'm sure we are going to lose the jobs. Probably. The question is a different way. So
no, that is true. That is true, Jatin. That is true. Whatever you are telling, if we didn't do automation, we will lose jobs definitely. Because what is the value add we are giving to the customer? That is not like simply the same kind of work we are giving something like that. It won't work. Only automation will.
No, my take is in a different way. It is not that we are not delivering something as an automation engineer. You are not delivering something to the customer, but whatever customer gets is going through the automation scripts. So whenever you want to give a stable functionality to a customer, automation is very, very important. So the way we see the importance of automation and need for automation should change from the management point of view. Even I have a feeling after the Agile and Scrum model, the testing becomes a little weaker, and same for automation also. So that thought process we need to change. So automation, testing, everything is equally important, and the automation whatever you are writing may not be delivering a new feature, but whatever you see and whatever the product is delivered to the customer is stable and is very quick because of the automation tools.
Sure, and I think there is one more aspect beyond automation. So all the testers now, especially in the agile world, we are talking. We have been getting trained on the T-shaped engineers, but now things are coming in action. In fact, we are looking at least in Micro Focus in the team where I work, we have a goal in this year to transform at least 30% of the engineers to T-shaped engineers. So which means in each Scrum team we need to have one developer who knows automation and one QA engineer who who knows coding and who can at least participate in fixing some defects. We have to look at going beyond automation.
Yeah. Sure.
Good discussion, guys. I mean, I think so. We had a good talk which covered varied aspects of automation, like what makes the automation success story, and then what can make us fail, and what should be the move ahead plan for us, and also what are the processes which are required related to automation and what we should look at following, and how the team should be actually structured, not a siloed team. They should be cross-functional teams. And how do we ensure that the engineers or the team are motivated to do automation? How do we encourage people to do automation? How we can actually talk about the success factor of automation and then ensure that the people find it interesting.
Jatin, I have a few points I can share.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
That's could be right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So let me give a disclaimer first that I don't intend to scare anybody. Okay. So this is just what I have seen and how I. Oops. There's a big echo.
Yeah.
Now we all know who is creating the echo.
Can you hear?
Yeah,
Yes,
I can hear.
Okay. Looks like it's bad.
No, but I think you can go ahead. We are still able to hear you.
Okay, testing. Is the echo still there?
It's gone.
Yes, it is there. Okay, I am really sorry about that.
I think it's getting better. Should we speak?
Okay, so let me try. So, when I see how the products have changed over a period of time and moving cloud, more and more customers are demanding interfaces for them to write their own applications and modules for the business objects to get connected and provide solutions in the business front. So if you see today in the business world where the money is, the reason I'm talking about money is because at the end of whatever we are doing, we are in the business of making money, and we need people to buy our stuff, and so that we can get money and do more on that. So we need the people with big money to buy our products, and the people with big money are the big corporate organizations where they believe that UI-based products limit their ability to do things rapidly and deliver business value proposition. For example, like if we have a product to hire or recruit people, companies like Macy's or Walmart, they have a recruitment drive during the Christmas and Thanksgiving holidays where 500, 1,000 to 2,000 candidates are being recruited. So those are big numbers. One cannot sit down and use UIs. So what I'm trying to say is more and more automation is expected by this corporate giant for them to do. Now, if they want if you want products which are more automated, then the only way for us to go forward in the future to build products with machine learning, artificial intelligence, and faster delivery capabilities. So, given the situation, if we think that automation is still an option, I think we are not aligned to what the business is changing. So we should start to assume that automation is the only way for us to be able to deliver faster and more reliable because of the speed at which those tests can run. So if that is assumed, then the question of motivating people to learn and then ability to deliver, reward. So all that becomes secondary because that is the primary responsibility of a test engineer in future to drive things forward. So this is what I've seen in my career, how things have moved, and I'm sure this will get faster in the days to come.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kurmi, for all of us to think.
I have a question to Kurmi. Neeraj here.
Hi, Neeraj.
Hi. It is good point actually. Sorry, Krishnan, to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So my question is that you bring a very good point actually. In the changing time, the demand of the QA engineer, earlier the demand was to QA engineer who can automate, but now the demand is to write a well-written code. It's as per the software development engineering test kind of thing profile. So and you bring lots of artificial intelligence and big data and all this, and there you cannot sit and do the manual test and do this. So what is the strategy, or what is the mindset and what kind of skill set person has to build? Because in the industry there are lots of young new people who are just out of college, and there are experienced professionals who are working in this field, and the thought process of both the person will be different. So what is the mindset and the strategy someone has to adopt to these changing things?
Sure. Jatin, if I can take this question.
Please go ahead. But I request everybody to please mute yourself to avoid this echo. And whenever you have to speak, please unmute and talk.
Sure. Okay, now I'm unmuted. So here's the thing is, I can tell you what is happening in my world. So today, at the beginner level, we are hiring individuals for testing team, where the tests that are given to the early talent when they join from the college, both to dev and the QA, the same set of tests. There's no difference. Okay, and the only differentiating factor for a QA person to come on board is the person's ability to analyze a failure. If something fails, what is the problem? How to solve the failure problem. So that's the only differentiating factor that we are looking at for the early talent. Now,
okay,
from the experience point of view, so we have different levels called technical level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is like a director, technical director. So at the technical level 2 and 3, when we do lateral hiring, we are looking at people who have been developers for some time, okay, or whose coding skills are equivalent to development. So the ability of a person to get a QA job is getting more stringent, because not only does the person has to be able to write code, the person also has to be able to analyze the failures that come out due to running the code. So that is getting tougher. So it is becoming challenging for the industry to find out people who have both these abilities, because writing code you will get it, but the ability to solve the problem, look for the solution is challenging. The other thing is it becomes extremely important for the QA world to look at people who has got machine learning and artificial intelligence in their background, because tens and thousands of tests that are running continuously every hour or every 2 hours are generating results. So people have to write systems, and people have to write products which are able to read these results through machine learning algorithms and project or predict the behavior of the software. Okay, so for developer it is very simple. He writes the code for a functionality that he has to build. Okay, for a tester the problem is you write your test, you execute your test, it gives you a result. Now you don't know what to assess of the results of 20,000 tests that you fired in a day. Okay, how do you go about? So those are kind of challenges that is coming in this world of the testing domain. So it's getting more and more stricter. It's not only that the software developer in test is what is becoming more prominent, but the knowledge of machine learning, artificial intelligence, the ability to solve a problem, these are getting more prominent these days. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. Thanks.
So I think, thanks guys. Jatin, it's time for the next presenter to present.
Let's quickly conclude. I think there's a lot of echo. Okay, so we had a good discussion around the breadth of automation and what should be covered, the processes and the motivation. I think with that I would like to thank all the panel members for their valued feedback and the inputs. And I'm sure we will be able to probably take this discussion further and then go deep dive into specific areas to probably understand more. And maybe I'll be more interested to know about, as Kurmi mentioned, some more and more examples where we can probably go and look into the way of the whole revolution of automation, and then don't even look at ourselves as automation engineers, rather than looking at as a developer and then kind of improving on the skill sets required. So with that, thank you so much for all your valued inputs, and thank. I think the next one, over to you, Krishnan.
Yeah, so Kunti, maybe you can open up a discussion thread in our discussion group so people can join and comment on that, I guess. And then we can on this topic. Okay, so Jatin, thanks for the moderation. It was a great moderation. I think you did a fantastic job moderating the whole panel discussion. Thank you for that. So over to you, Naresh, the next presenter.
Thank you, Krishnan. I hope everybody is able to hear me and is able to see my
I would suggest everybody to mute. So maybe what I can do is I can mute all, and Naresh, you could actually unmute yourself if that works for you.
Sure, Krishnan.
Yeah, let's see how to do it. I'm also figuring out how to do it. 1 second. Naresh, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Naresh, and I'll just give a quick introduction. I have been in this industry for 14 years, but how much experience I have is questionable because I think a lot of you are more knowledgeable than me. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit of automation, but I'm not going to cover a lot. I'm limited my scope to few areas about controlling how do you control huge number of tests and sanitize them, and I'm not very good at preaching or presenting, so what I'll do is I'll just take a small case study or a project that I worked on and walk you through the problems that we underwent and how we solved them.
Yeah, good.
So moving on to the next slide, right? So if you see the automation landscape, right? So when we talk about automation, a lot of things come into picture, as we witnessed in the panel discussion as well. What kind of tools to use?
The slide is not visible actually. Only what is visible is only your desktop. So the slide is not visible. So what you should do is you see that rectangle bar, right? You see the rectangle there. Yeah, click that. And you can now select whichever presentation. Yeah. Yes, great. Go ahead, it's visible now.
It's visible? Right. Okay. So when we talk about automation, right, so there are a lot of things that we start thinking about, or a lot of things that grab our attention, or things that we should be worried about, right? So like we witnessed in the panel discussion, when we start a new project, right? So a lot of things come into picture, like what kind of tools should we pick up, whether open source tools or paid tools to do a job, what kind of language, what is the skill set of the team, because language and the skill set should match, right? So if you have people who have only scripting skills and you pick up Java, it's obviously a problem, right? So whether the tool or the language fit is something that a team can actually use or apply. And the application technology stack also plays a huge role when we start automation. Then there are test frameworks and company standards and ecosystem, because like if you have to integrate with other products in your company, you should be on the same library set or the same tool chain, right? So those also start influencing the decisions on what to use and how to use it when you start automation, right? And then the big question of GUI versus API. Do you really want to do GUI automation, or do you think how much percentage of your test should be GUI, how much percentage should be API, right? And what type of test do you want to automate? Functional tests, E2E, performance tests, and how do you do maintenance, triage, right? Once everything is done, that's a big thing that comes into picture. So you spend a lot of time doing that, right? So in the initial days, everything is hunky-dory. Everybody is excited about generating tests, but once they're generated, then the real pain starts. How do you maintain them and keep the sanity, right? And then there's a question of the continuous integration tools. How do you want to structure your continuous integration projects, all that stuff. So and there might be many more areas which I would have missed and you guys can think of, but these are things that I thought of. But I won't be covering a lot of these things. I'll be covering maybe a few of this stuff using my case study, right? So I'll move on to the next slide, unless somebody has to say something or has a comment. Okay, so for the case study, I picked up a project that we worked on a few years back, and some of the members here were part of that project, and I guess they will chime in whenever it's necessary. Right, okay. So to give you a little background of the project, it was a storage management application. So a few years back, we thought that we started building a storage management application from scratch. So we decided that we'll work in a Scrum model. So teams were formed, and like it was a big project. There was a large number of teams, like 10 plus Scrum teams, and the teams were spread across geographies. So I won't go too deep into the project. It was a typical client server project, and I'll just touch upon the point that it had various interfaces for the customer, API, CLI, and GUI, because that will become important as we go forward in our study or the presentation. Okay, so as usual, whenever you start off, there are challenges. Right, so when we started off, the questions started coming, okay, which language will we use, right? So whether we'll use Perl or Python or Java, right? Which framework do we pick up, right? And do we have the same framework for both GUI or API tests, right? What will be the governance model? Will there be a separate automation team, or will there be automation engineers in each team, right? Then if automation is happening in the same sprint, like how do you control this huge number of tests that start coming in, right? And they did start coming in, and we started seeing a lot of issues, right? So there were bad pass rates, and the continuous integration process was not completely ironed out, and things started going haywire. So what started happening was teams started developing tests every sprint. So we had decided that we will automate the functionality delivered in the sprint in the same sprint itself. So a sprint would be marked complete, or a user story would be marked complete only if it has automation or tests associated with it, right? So running tests. So large number of tests started coming in, but when we started running them in the CI, right, so what we noticed was only 10% of them used to pass consistently. We never could figure out why, right? Because people would test their scripts and put them in, but they would do it in their own. The testing would have been done in their own environments, and sometimes we found various kind of problems, like people hard coding stuff, assuming the environment details, like I would expect an AD server to have these kind of users, or I would expect a SIP server to be there, right? Or I would expect that my cluster has this many disks. Suppose if it's a storage system, so because we work on storage systems, so I'm just giving an example from there, right? And other similar things, right? And hard coding of IP addresses, paths. They look very simple and silly, but there were a lot of such issues, and it was pretty challenging because we had accumulated more thousands of tests, and we were still not able to run all of them. So then questions started coming in from the management. Okay, so what the value add, and how do we make these tests add some value to the release? So what's the point of having these many tests if you can't actually figure out whether your build is good or not, right? So that's the point when we started thinking about how to actually sanitize this test, and we started working on it, right? So we came up with something called a test qualification process, right? So what we thought was, at least what tests come in should be usable, right? So I'll move on to the next slide. If somebody has something to add or chime in, please feel free to do so. Okay, so we came up with something called test qualification process, and we started off with very simple things like coding guidelines, right? Who would have thought that this would actually make a difference, like code reviews, having test templates, doing static code checks, and whatnot, right? So we had a set of static checks, and then we had a set of random checks. So we said that once a script is checked in, right, it has to undergo all the set of static checks listed on the left side, right? And then there's a set of runtime checks, right? So for doing this runtime checks, we built a system. Am I audible, or is there a lot of echo?
You are good, Naresh. No echo. You are audible.
Okay. Shivgita, please feel free to chime in.
I can get it. Yeah, no problem. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. So then we had a set of we wanted to do a set of runtime checks before we say that the script is actually usable, right? So because we didn't we were having nightly runs and CI, but the point was that we are not able to figure the quality of the build, right? So we wanted tests which were stable and usable at the end of the day, right? Which could give us feedback of the build. So before this test could get pushed into the main CI projects, we decided that we'll have a staging branch, right? And so all the code check-ins that used to come in from the testers would, of different teams, would go into the staging branch first, and our system used to pick up this test, create test plans. By test plans, I mean the groups of tests, right? And to run them in different orders. Like we had different kinds of tests for these tests, right? So we ran them in multiple configurations. So if like we supported multiple kinds of deployments, so we ran this test across those deployments. We ran them in random order, right? So just to check that they didn't assume that my script A would be preceded by script B, right? So every unit should have been portable and shouldn't have any dependencies outside its own test, right? If it had to state it explicitly, right? To do those kind of checks, right? And repeating the test n number of times just to check its reliability, right? And also to check that it doesn't leave some state behind in the system, and when it gets executed the next time, it fails because it has not cleaned up properly, right? And then there was the system state checks. So if you go into system, execute it, and make stuff haywire, like bringing down some volumes or bring down a system to do services which others might depend on, right? So if some scripts are doing that, to do that kind of checks also, we had put in those kind of checks. So after every script ran, we checked whether everything was still the same, right? And if it passed all these checks, we used to move the script then to the main branch, right? So this is a system that we built, right? So next, I'd like to describe the workflow in a more proper manner, right? So this is a slide that I created yesterday itself. Okay, so so if you see those yellow people, right, those are testers, and they're checking the script. So I'm just describing the thing that I'm just showing in a workflow chart, whatever I just described. So it goes through the static check pass, and if it's good, then it goes into the staging branch, and then if it's a new script, right, then it has to go through the runtime checks, right? If they pass, it goes into CI. Everything's good here, right? So, but if it's not a new script, right, then it doesn't have to undergo these tests unless and until we have not reported any failures against the script, right? So, and you can see, right, so if it's passed, it's going to CI. If it doesn't pass, if it's a product bird, we'll file it and whatnot. So those are things I think everybody is aware of, those processes, right? So we did all this, and the pass rates did start improving, but it was not still there. So maybe it improved by 22, 30%, 40%, but there were still scripts kept on failing, right? And they were lagging. They were not moving to the main branch, right? So then we realized that testers actually needed feedback for their scripts, right? So that's when we thought, okay, so we need to help them to get there if they are not able to get there, right? So because even after all these checks, what used to happen, the number of scripts that actually reached the main branch was less, and management was worried. So we have spent so much money and effort, but we have got value of only 20 to 30%. There are only 200 tests that are passing out of 200 tests that have come into the main branch, and the rest 2,000, 3,000 are still there, but we can't use them, right? So we had to do something more to get there, right? So then we started talking to people. We realized that they actually needed help getting there. So then we came up something called a self-service portal, right? So where actually people could test their scripts in the continuous integration environment before they could actually check it, right? So in the kind of deployments we would actually deploy the script in or test it, right? So, and it would undergo all those tests and give them feedback immediately, even before they actually check the script in, right? So this move actually helped us move even a little bit ahead, right? So it improved our thing to more than 40 to 50%, and this was a great help. So in fact, it was so helpful that even developers started using it to test their code before they started checking it, right? So so then they started requesting, so we had to add features into it so that existing sanitized scripts can be run across against the code before they check it. But I think there are better methods to do it these days. This was like 6-7 years back. Nowadays people talk about continuous delivery, and so these things are still a little bit old-fashioned. It's become a little bit old-fashioned now. Okay, so after all this also there were still a certain percentage of scripts which still never made it because people never spent the effort to fix it, and we had to spend a lot of effort actually escalating that, okay, there are these scripts which keep on continuously failing and there are no check-ins happening on that to fix it, right? But there were so many teams and so many managers, we had to spend quite a bit of effort doing that. So we thought that we will automate that process as well, right? So we came up with something called an escalation daemon, right? So what it used to do was, so all the scripts that we were running in our TQP system, we had a database in the backend which maintained the history of the pass rates and the fail rates of the scripts, right? And we had started automatically filing birds against automation, right, to track these failures, because it was getting very difficult to track this huge number of failures, and the number of scripts were very high, right? So then we built this escalation daemon because we got tired of manually escalating to managers and people to get these things fixed. So this daemon used to run every night. It used to track all the bugs that were marked against the scripts, okay, and remove bugs which are in terminal state. That basically means the script was either fixed or it was a product issue, right? And it started mailing the owners of the script, right? So if bugs or config issues were associated with the script failure, we started mailing them. And if they didn't take any action for 5 days, we used to mail their managers. So this thing actually, what happened after this was, we lost a lot of friends, right? And but it started improving the pass rate drastically. So this was, I think, this something less technical. It was a less technical thing, but it was a little bit funny, so I just wanted to share, right? So I'll stop here for a bit and take some questions before I move on to the next set of challenges. Do you have any questions, guys? Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, so there are no questions, then I'll move on to the next slide then. Okay, so after this, then we had sanitized most of our tests, and then there was also the GUI automation as well. So okay, I heard someone say something. Okay, so then we had a few more challenges, right? So it was still not done. So and when we talk about automation, not talking about GUI is like a crime. So we will talk about that as well. So we'll talk about the GUI automation next. Okay, so when we started developing GUI automation tests as well from the start of the project, but in case of GUI, what the challenge was that GUIs kept on changing from sprint to sprint, right? So we decided that we'll automate the GUI in the next sprint. So we'll never automate the GUI in the same sprint, right? So, and we started automating small functional test cases for GUI. And we accumulated quite a few of them, and then we realized that it was a maintenance nightmare, right? Because the amount of effort spent in maintaining them was more than the amount of effort that we actually spent in developing them, right? And also the returns were pretty low because we could catch a lot of these issues using the API tests, right? And the GUI changes were so huge because it was a product that was getting developed from scratch. The changes were pretty huge. There were a lot of UX feedback that was coming in continuously, and so the GUI kept on changing. So, but a lot of workflows or customer workflows are possible only through the GUI, right? And we anticipated that our product will be more used using the GUI, so we needed to have some automation there, right? But functional automation was not the answer to that. So then what we did was we thought we'll do all our use case or end-to-end automation using the GUI, right? So but these are pretty huge test cases, right? So and then we changed the approach completely, right? So we brought in a set of specialized engineers for GUI automation. We made another team for that, and then these people started automating the end-to-end test cases. The success rate was good, so we started finding quite a few issues, but these tests were also very high maintenance, but they were giving good return value in terms of the bugs found by them, right? So, but these tests were pretty huge tests. So each test case would actually comprise of 30 to 40 tests, and we had like over a period built around 300 to 400 tests. So I'll come to the problems of that later on. I'm not delving too much into the GUI automation problems because I think most of us know that, and we would actually require at least an hour or so just to talk about that separately, right? So I'm just talking about the problems of how to basically manage these automation suites. Right? So then there was the question of API tests versus GUI tests, right? So because the GUI tests were becoming all the small functional tests were removed from GUI, so we thought that we'll actually increase the coverage of those things using the API tests, or we'll see where they were overlapping, because a lot of the tests that we were doing through GUI were overlapping in GUI, so we started retiring those tests and started focusing for all those areas only to exercise only API tests, right? Because they were more reliable, at least once they got stabilized. So, and we could reliably run or maintain them, right? Okay. So, does anybody have questions here or any comments?
Hello, it's Bhavani here. The GUI test, whatever has been automated, is it not successful because the GUI were changing from the development side, or what was the reason for the failure?
Okay, so there were multiple reasons for failure. GUI kept on changing. That was one reason. The other thing was GUI automation itself involved a larger. GUI tests are by nature flaky, right? Because it depends a lot. There are a lot of things that come into play there. The different browser versions, compatibility, right, and timeouts, right, and the tool itself, right? So because even if you use Selenium or any other tool, the support for all kinds of widgets being there, right, is also an issue. So there were all kinds of different kinds of these issues, and also the skill set, right? So a lot of people, so it requires you to be more defensive while you do coding for GUIs, right? So at least GUI tests. So that also came into picture, and all these things actually added to the maintenance mode of GUI suites. Does this answer your question?
Yes. You can.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. Right, so once we were done, right, so basically we are not done, so the project was going on. So we ended up with having a huge number of tests, right, and then the next set of problems came in, like we are not getting quick feedback on the builds, because the runtime of this test used to go beyond 16 hours, 17 hours to run the complete test suite, right? So then we had to solve those problems by parallelizing tests, right? And then we thought that is not going to work. Even that is not going to work out in a longer run, right? So we started creating different suites for different problems, right? So we already had them. So but having explicit CI projects for them, like a separate project for just qualifying new host operating systems. So a set of tests which will, if you run them, you can know. A set of tests which will just qualify hardware platforms, right? So because we do deal with a lot of hardware models, right, in our company, and a set of tests for dependent software, right? So we used to embed some other applications inside. So whenever a new version of that application came in, we had to give a good feedback. So running the whole suite of 16 hours didn't make sense. So we had separate suite for that, right? Which we identified relevant tests just pertaining to those kind of areas. So we ended up having a multitude of suites, so which solve the problem of quick feedback on builds, which were done for various different reasons, right? So sometimes because we were a management application, so there will be a new version of the managed OS that comes in, and you have to immediately give feedback to that team saying that, yeah, we are able to work with you, right? So and a lot of teams actually depended on our feedback. So we had to have different kinds of suits. So and to get this quick feedback on builds, right? So we ended up having multitude of suits, right? And then we had this problem of, because of this high number of tests, right? The triage for every run was becoming pretty high, and it involved a lot of effort, both from the functional QA teams and the set of engineers who were maintaining the continuous integration suites, right? So then what we started doing was improving the logging mechanisms, and then auto-generating lower level libraries so that everybody sees the same thing and uses the same thing. And we took such similar actions to actually start reducing the high triage times, but there's no end to it. So those problems will still be there, but yeah. So these were the next set of problems that came in, and after this we realized that having good development practices, right? You can't just automate, or somebody just can't come and say, today I will do automation, or I am an automation engineer, right? So we need to have the right skill sets in the team, right? People should be trained, and they should be having skill sets on par with developers, right? So we basically need developers to automate stuff, right? It can't be part-time engineers who come in just for a few days, or think that, okay, I'll improve my skill by doing this, right? So you have to undergo complete training, learn development completely of whatever tool or language, become an expert on that, then come and do. Then basically you will have more stable and reliable automation suites. So these are the slides I prepared. I'm done with the slides, and then I'll just take questions, or we can have any discussions on this topic. If you
Naresh, one thought.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing the details. I just love that. So one thought for all of us is, we a lot of times we think that automation is just something that we can do, and there are people who talk about factory models of automation or industry model of automation, saying give the test cases to somebody, they'll just automate it. So I have seen things fail. So one thing to note, everybody, is that the whole organization has a development team, and to ensure that the development team does a good job, they have a test team. So the same model recursively should be applied to automation, that if we have a test team which is scripting or which is writing automated tests, then we need to have an infrastructure, or we need to have a practices in place to ensure that these tests also should be maintained, managed, and supported throughout this life cycle of this test. It will have a life cycle. So today that concept doesn't exist in most places, but wherever it exists, I know that they are reaping harvest out of this automation that they do. Thanks.
Hello?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on perspective, right, from Naresh's thing. So what I can tell is automation is one thing where management also heavily depends on, right? And automation, even the leads and the managers need to take care of the management viewpoint, right? So what all we seen here, right? That is stability of the things and ability to make release decisions based on these automation tools, ability to get the test runs and results sooner, right, to again make a right decisions. So I think as a QA engineers and especially as the automation leads, they need to really consider the management requirements, right, on priority and with right perspective. Then only I think we can build the automation, test automation of which is of really use and which really makes the decision making very easier and simple, right? So yeah, I just wanted to bring that point because all these points, whatever he brought up, were leading to the final decision making process. How quickly I can make a decision.
Hello, Krishnan.
I think we are at the verge of last few minutes, and maybe Krishnan want to summarize or conclude.
Okay, I think Krishnan is having problems with his audio conference, has just messaged. So.
Okay.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, Krishnan.
Oh, I don't know what happened actually. Some settings got changed. Sorry about that. Okay, great. So Naresh, it was thank you for the presentation. I think it was a great presentation. I think. By the way, are you guys effectively using this process day in and day out in your company?
No, Krishnan, which process are you talking about?
The one that you showed just now in your presentation in terms of maintaining the scripts and the
No, so
chart.
we started out with that till the time the practices got ingrained into people, and after that we didn't need that actually. It just became an overhead.
Oh, it became an overhead. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly the problem with automation. You know, at some point in time, what happens is the whole of automation suite of test cases that we do, it becomes a maintenance nightmare for the teams. So, I mean, also when this is being a very dynamic industry, right? People coming and going, to the teams. I think the repeatability of automation scripts in terms of where they are. The process that is required to maintain the automation script has to be carried forward from one person to another person as the people keep changing within the team. As long as the attrition is not a big problem, that's fine. But I don't think that's an issue. That's a smooth ride for any company in this industry, I guess. So
yeah, I just want to make a point that we didn't have automation. What happened was we didn't need the test qualification process anymore. Because what happened was the process got ingrained in the team so much that everybody, and over a period everybody got trained and they automatically started writing good scripts.
Well, that's a beautiful thing that happened
so
in your
the process of qualifying the scripts before moving them to CI became one overhead. So we stopped that.
Excellent. So Krishnan and Naresh, so one thought. So how many of us would agree to the fact that a developer once knows how to write a code will start to write good code? We still have coding practices, we still have reviews, we have multiple reviews, okay, and on top, after having all those multiple reviews, we still have a test team to defend that piece of code. So the assumption that the coding practices once learned will be remembered throughout the life, and then we don't need to make sure that we have support systems to check and correct what is written is something which may not be successful in the future, is what I think.
Yeah, right, Kurmi, but the only thing is like we might have the most efficient way of coding and taking care of things, but you still need some kind of a qualification mechanism from an end user point of view, you know. So initially maybe it's heavyweight, but as the efficiency sets in, right, the qualification process, what we call as testing and QA, becomes more lighter and easy to manage, I guess. Right. Yeah. Sure.
Yes. So, Kurmi, to answer your question from my perspective, right? So, so over a period, right? As you said rightly, right? So the checks should be there, but so over a period, what happened? The static checks were enough. We never needed the dynamic systems which actually tested the test scripts. So the use for them got reduced, but the static checks were actually enough because people learned how to review each other's code, and the discipline came in, and the governance model actually became better. So that system was pretty useful when we had a huge number of tests and we didn't know how to sanitize them. So we needed that system at that time. But to control new tests when they were coming in, static checks were actually working well. Like code reviews and lint, or those kind of tools, right? You can use them, and those were actually helping a lot. Sure. We didn't need a dynamic system to test the scripts again.
Okay.
Sure, Naresh. Any other questions? Any more questions from any of you or any of us? Okay. All right. So we have come to the final closure of this webinar. I would say yet another successful webinar. So I think we can give a pat on ourselves, I guess. I mean, so thank you very much for all the time that you have spent over a weekend, another weekend. And I would say, you know, it's been a good learning for all of us. Both the panel discussion as well as the presentation has been excellent. So thanks for all the time that you guys have taken to prepare. The session is being recorded now. I'll post the recording wherever I could, and I'll give you the URL. So having said all this, I'm formally closing the call. Wish you all a very happy New Year and a Merry Christmas, and we will meet next year. I think the next webinar we'll have to plan, but I think it should happen sometime in February, I guess. Maybe we should plan for that. January might be a little tight because people are just coming in and they are getting ready for the upcoming year. I mean, for the year that they have ventured in. So wish you all a very happy New Year, and take care of yourself, and let this New Year bring all cheers in your family and friends. Bye bye. Thank you.
Happy New Year, guys.
Thanks everyone.